When you get a visual image of them, what parts were robot, what parts were human, or were they all 100% robot that just looked human?
They were very much like humanoid. You think a cyborg, but just all metal, like no flesh, like no artificial flesh.
Gotcha. But so that's why I'm keying in on that a little bit. Is you've mentioned zombies, which would be dead human. You've mentioned cyborg, which is actually human machine blending, but these were actually 100% metal. They just gave this appearance and the movement of zombies. And did you get the sense that there was any human parts in there at all, that they like had the brain of a human that had died, or any human connection, or they were 100% non-human and only looked human externally?
I would say, and here I go off on one of my philosophical meditations.
Sure.
But there's something about the human species that we love having us and thems, right? Like clear, this is us and this is our opponent. And we've seen that with the Cold War, right? There's us, the capitalists, and there's the communists. We've seen that with the Spartans and the Athenians. Down through history, there's always been an us and a them.
In group, out group, yeah.
Yeah. And that we dehumanize these groups to make it easier for us to fight them, right? Yeah. But really, we're one and the same, right? And that's why conflict is so difficult, because we have to do the Edward Said, the othering of them. But that's just a construct. Yeah. Really, we're more alike than we're similar, right? So that's why with these robots, I think that they had to so clearly, every part of them was they're like cannon fodder, if that makes sense. Like there was no remorse for what we were doing. Like it was, clearly these were the enemy, and there was, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. That's why I was, I don't know. I do something called rattling doors, and I get an idea of one to go somewhere, and sometimes the door doesn't pop open, and I drop it. But I think there's relevance to some type of symbol or the way it's presented. And the nature of these creatures seemed important because you're fighting them. Then again, I could rattle that doorknob and it's just like they could end up being nothing more than a vehicle to make sense of this experience you're having with your family. Like, okay, we need an enemy, brain, throw one out there, robots, done. And it just moves on. And it may not be that relevant, but I did want to also ask a little bit about, did you have a sense of what had caused the apocalypse on Earth? How it had gotten into that destroyed state? Did these machines do it? Did you have any sense of that in the dream? How this kind of state of affairs came to be? Yeah,
so great. I'm loving this, man. These are great questions.
Thank you.
Oftentimes in movies, like some of the zombie movies that I like, the zombies are they're like the setting. They're not actually the story. The story is the human element, the human struggle, right? But the zombies are just sort of like, if it could take place in Hawaii and it was a rom-com, the zombie is this very existential film. And of course, the word zombie comes from like hoodoo and voodoo cultures, and was not actually a reanimated corpse. Marie Laveau, have you ever heard of her?
That also sounds familiar, but go ahead.
She was this incredible woman in New Orleans who was like a healer. But people thought that she was like this witch and this like demon lady, Christians, but she was able to placate the Catholic Church, placate government in Louisiana, and heal people, right? Again, this is my very, I'm out of school here. Like this is not this is just based on a book I read. Anyways, but the grand zombie was this snake that she had. And it was like, again, as I'm recalling, it was the essence of wisdom. But we see the snake and we're like, oh my God, it's a monster. So we Frankenstein it, right? Like, Dr. Frankenstein, we create monsters when really, we're corrupting things.
Sure.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, and sometimes you're talking about memory changing, but then also history changing based on our interpretation in terms of what did we actually see, how did we understand it, and then what do we tell others? What is that? The communication process of what you think, what you say, or how you say it, what the person hears, and then how they process it. You got like at the minimum 4 opportunities for a message to go completely wrong. You conceive it wrong, you express it wrong, they hear it wrong, and they process it wrong. At every step of the way, we're in for a mess.
Yes, it's again going back to Plato's allegory of the cave, right? And that's why the internet is so amazing, because we're getting all these ideas together. If we just stop being so dead set on our truth, again, this is where my show and your show kind of come in. You know, I'm probably wrong about everything. I'm not willing to die on the hill for that way of thinking. But I am passionate about it, but I want to listen to you too, right? And that's where we're going, you know. And I'm sorry, where am I going with this? But with Plato's allegory of the cave, you had the guy who went out and saw the light and then came back and was like, dude, you got to come check this out. But they were like, get away from me. I'm going to kill you. You're a monster. So we demonize what we don't understand because we're afraid of the consequences. Yeah. And that's kind of like the zombie. That's where I'm going with this. Is the zombie really in this culture that it was taken from, based on my reading, my limited reading, is the zombie was supposed to be like a gateway, a portal to a deeper understanding, but we saw it as something to be fearful of because we wanted to stay in our cave. Does that make sense?
No, I think there's a connection there for sure. So bringing it back to the dream.
I appreciate you. Thank you for this.
Oh yeah, you're welcome. So it may not be, it may just be kind of a cultural reference from your, from living in America and then as a child. And this is again, relating back to when you were much younger and maybe your memory of some of those iconic representations of different things from that time period, kind of bringing them forward, saying, if I'm going to be in a battle with my family as my teammates, we need an antagonist. So bam, metal zombies. And it says something about you too. And I guess we're kind of into the interpretation side of things, that they weren't human. So you didn't have to feel guilty about killing them either. It was like, well, if they're just robots, then, you know, at least I'm not hurting anybody and I can have fun with this. So it wasn't presenting you an image of something you would then have to reflect on uncomfortably and say, when you woke up, like, how did I enjoy killing people? That was horrible. Your brain just shut that off and said, they're robots. Don't worry about it. So that might have been the meaning for that.
Such a great point.